My name is Veronica Root Martinez. I'm a professor of law here at Duke Law School, and I research organizational and professional ethics. I feel pretty sure I must have heard about it during my first year in law school, and I probably heard about it from upperclassmen in the law school experience. But I do remember that I wanted to try and clerk pretty early on because I thought it would be a really great experience to be able to develop a mentor and to get connections within the legal profession, in large part because I didn't have lawyers in my family. And so I thought that this would allow me to learn more about the law while also joining in my experience, was a larger clerk family. So having additional connections within the legal profession that I would be able to contact and draw upon in the future. It's really important to develop relationships with professors, but this is kind of best done organically if you're going to get a really nice letter. And so I was a research assistant to a professor at my law school for 2 years. We worked on issues related to the foster care system and aging out. And that has nothing to do with my scholarship today, but it was super interesting. And I was able to write for the professor, research for the professor. The research involved calling random people in child services offices all over the South. And so she was able to see kind of how I would creatively get people to answer my questions who didn't need to. So that was one way that I think allowed me to develop the right reference so that I could be able to clerk. So that's a really important piece. And then the other piece was I also thought really strategically about where I wanted to clerk. I went to law school in the Midwest, and a lot of my classmates were really focused on what are pretty competitive circuits, so the DC Circuit, Second Circuit. But I'm from Texas, and so I blanketed judges in the 5th and 11th Circuit where there weren't as many of my classmates happening to apply. And so I thought, I'll stick out in the pack a little bit more because they're not going to get 50 applications from my school. And so that was part of my strategy. And as it did work out that I ended up clerking in the 5th Circuit. And that was great because I was 3 hours from my mom's house. And at a certain point in your life, you might not necessarily be really close to your family. And so for me, it was really nice to have another period where I could just hop on I-20 and drive 3 hours and be able to see my family. So one of the things I realized as I was clerking was that it's really challenging to write an excellent brief. And so by the time I was done clerking, I wanted to work in a place where I could figure out how you wrote really high quality work. It also taught me quite a bit about obtaining and maintaining credibility with a panel of judges, right? That it's really important to concede when the law is not on your side, and then do your best to distinguish, but to not attempt to trick anyone because they are going to figure it out. And so that was also super important. And on the soft skills side, the judge that I clerked for would always hammer in that relationships are the most important part of the job, and that your reputation is incredibly important. The legal profession is very small. And the longer I'm in it, the more I meet people who know people I went to school with or who I practiced with. And maintaining your reputation, maintaining your relationships is incredibly important. The judge I worked for, he also really emphasized the clarity of opinions. He didn't want there to be dicta. He wanted us to write in a way where the litigants knew that even if they were losing, that we had heard what they had to say, that we had appropriately taken that into account, and that they had gotten their day in court. So judges can think about how they could signal that they might want a diverse set of clerkship applicants. And that diversity could be in a range of ways. That might be from a range of law schools, but it could also be regarding gender or first generation or race. But to signal that more explicitly in contacts with the clerkship offices at different law schools so that they know that they should be encouraging folks to apply to that judge. The other thing that's really important, though, I think, is for law schools to dispel the assumption that only those at the very, very tippy top of the class are going to be able to clerk. Judges don't just want the person with the 4.0 who was on law review and who did moot court. Those people are going to get clerkships. But judges also, they know they're hiring an interesting person to work in a relatively close employment setting for a year. So they also want people who are interesting, who have been the captain of their varsity softball team, or who have or who before law school did Teach for America. Having a really interesting background is going to be to somebody's benefit, and it's not just the grades. So I think it's really important for us to explain to students that it's not just grades, it's you as an entire person. And then the other thing that I think can be really helpful is to make sure that students have an opportunity to do a mock interview with faculty prior to any clerkship interviews. At my former institution, this was implemented while I was there, and it made a real difference, particularly for our first generation lawyer students, in their ability to take an interview into an offer for a clerkship. And it really is just being able to think more expansively about what sort of questions you're going to be asked so that you can answer them as well as you can. And so I think having the mock interview can be really helpful, particularly for folks who don't have lawyers in their family.